Right. So give us a 3, 2, 1, and then we're into it. So 3, 2, 1. Good evening, mate.
Good
How are
evening,
you?
Tom. How are you doing? Yeah, I'm good,
Good.
thank you. How are you?
All good. So this is episode 1 of the Diving Deep podcast. I'm really pleased, mate, that you're my first guest because we
I'm
speak
excited
quite
that
a
you
lot.
asked me.
Yeah, no, it's
Thank you.
cool. Like it's a brand new thing for me, something that I've been wanting to do for ages, but never quite got round to it. And obviously, with the sort of the situation with my Instagram, that all going a bit to shit, then I thought, well, do you know what? It's the right time now because I'm almost starting afresh to do something that I always wanted to do. So
Yeah, cool.
yeah, so I want to give you a little bit of an intro to the people that don't know you. So just bear with me. I've got a few notes. So yeah, your artist name is Brix Mortar. Originally from Halifax, but now residing in sunny Glasgow. Obviously, you've been at it quite a while, mate. DJ and producer, and obviously from your bio, and obviously I know we've spoke a bit of a raver from back in the day. Obviously, quite a key part of the music scene up north. Obviously, around the Hacienda time, you obviously helped establish the Viva the Factory nights around Manchester. So yeah, you've been at it a while, mate.
Yeah, I certainly have.
Which is good. So yeah, like I was thinking back as to how we sort of like come into contact, and the first time from what I can remember was through Graham's course from Right and Saying.
It was, yeah.
We were both on his artist blueprint course.
Yeah.
And then sort of like we started talking a bit from there about music, and I think we've got some similar beliefs on things in the music industry around sort of like maybe how it works and that. Both quite like each other's music style. So yeah, no, it's been great to meet you, mate, over this last maybe year or so. So basically, like, where I want to start with it is I want to go like right back to the beginning from you. So like, where did it all start, really?
Well, I think in terms of like DJing and sort of getting into house music, I mean, I got into house music before I started DJing. Probably properly into house music in around sort of 1991, 92.
Yeah.
Well, that's obviously when I was old enough to start going clubbing. And then I very quickly decided I really want some decks. So I mean that took another few years, but I did manage to get some eventually. In fact, I've still got the same pair of decks that I've had since then.
Joking.
They're not looking the best, but they still work.
Out of curiosity.
Technics 1210s.
Yeah.
Are they Mark 1s? Are they Mark 2s?
Is that the first decks that you started on?
That's the first decks I started on. Yeah, well, no, I tell a lie. Actually, I first started having a go at DJing at friends' houses.
Yeah.
So obviously we'd go back to people's houses, and I started having a little bash there.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends were a few years older than me. So they were actually already DJing, DJing at local nights in Halifax.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how I got into the whole, the DJing scene. And then
what year would that have been?
Oh, I think I got my turntable. I was 18 when I bought my turntable, so it would have been 95, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, around about that time, 94, 95.
So that's like quite a big. That's when house music sort of like really started to become more popular, didn't it? Like as it got into the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, I used to go to the biggest nights for me were obviously Hard Times, and Hard Times it started off in Huddersfield actually.
Yeah,
that was for me. That was the best venue, but I'm sure lots of people will argue differently about that. Because then it moved on to Leeds, and I kind of fell out of love with it. But yeah, that was the biggest house night for me, and that's where basically the guy that was running Hard Times was bringing all the US DJs over to Huddersfield. You had like Todd Terry, you had like Tony Humphreys, Roger Sanchez, like all the big names, you know, in little old Huddersfield. So it was amazing.
Wicked.
And then a few years after that, 1997, 98 was when me and a friend, we'd kind of been DJing at parties and things for a while. And we both definitely had the same, you know, we liked the same kind of music. Became quite good friends. And that was around about the time when the Hacienda had closed. And that's where we came up with the name Viva the Factory, because of Factory Records. So, and then basically what we did, we just basically asked all the old Hacienda DJs to come and play at our night. So we had, you know, John De Silva, we had Elliot Eastwick, Tom Wainwright. We had quite a handful of good DJs playing. The Unabombers, but they weren't really Hacienda. They were doing a night called the Electric Chair. But we had the Unabombers on. So yeah, and then that kind of lasted a few years, 2 to 3 years, and then actually I kind of changed my vibe a little bit, because I felt like as it got into like the 2000s, early 2000s, house music just got a bit rubbish for me. It just didn't really appeal to me. I actually started getting more into what was known at the time as new jazz.
Right. Okay.
Which is it's kind of like two-step almost. That kind of, you know, that kind of beat, and just a bit more kind of jazzy.
Do you remember when
and then
big beat became quite popular?
Round about that time, probably.
It's just like a genre that nobody ever talks about. But I can remember big beat being quite a big thing. You know, like it had a period, didn't it? And
that's where like Fatboy Slim came from. That kind of vibe. I can't remember that label that he was running at the time. Skin. Yeah, that's the one. So I mean, house music just seemed to peak around 98, 99, and then it just sort of dropped off for me. I mean, I've no doubt there was probably still some good house music being produced, but it just, I think what it was actually, you got labels like Strictly Rhythm and even like Subliminal Records. I mean, I used to play a lot of stuff on Subliminal, but it just all started sounding the same. You know, they were just churning stuff out, and it got a little bit repetitive.
I experienced that, and it's no offense to it or anything like that, is when the Head Candy stuff started coming quite popular. I liked some of it, but most of it I just could not. It just felt like it was just churned out, and it was just all a bit poppy and a bit like, not all of it, because there was a couple of good bits that I quite liked, that like South Street Player and all that sort of stuff. That was like, you know, Who's Changing Your Mind, and that was right in that same era. But a lot of it, I just thought like, this is just pop music. It's just pop music basically, and I really like, as it becomes so popular, like everybody was into funky house, and I was just like, this is not me. Like, you know, I really like the French stuff, you know.
The same.
But then that happened, and I was just like, nah, this is just not for me. You know, it's got no attitude to it, and obviously that sort of it felt like that took over for a number of years, and I was a bit the same. I sort of like fell out of love with it a bit, but then it never lasted, you know. And I would say like the disco stuff that's out now is better than that Head Candy stuff that was out for a number of years. So.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, and then in terms of producing, I mean, I'd had a couple of goes, you know, with things like Fruity Loops. Remember Fruity Loops and a couple of other bits of software, but I just didn't like that whole, you know, just trying to do things with a mouse. I just didn't understand it at all. Just seemed to take too long to do anything. So in actual fact, it was only 3 years ago when I decided to, you know, buy some hardware and start like, I actually bought a digital sort of 32 track recorder. And I was trying to record music that way. I very quickly realized that what I needed was a DAW in order to be able to arrange the music quickly.
Yeah.
Because I had all these ideas, but I couldn't quantize everything.
I started on years ago, like just having a bit of a play around. No, I wasn't serious about it. I'm talking, yeah, probably it's 20 years ago now on Cubase. And it blew my mind, mate. I couldn't do it. You know, I brought like an old sampler, because that's the bit that fascinated me. Because obviously at that point, a lot of the records were old sampled records, you know, like more so than today. Because obviously that's really what house music is built on, isn't it? You know, and I thought, how cool is it that I could take a bit of a record and I could then use that and make it my own. But I quickly realized that actually trying to do that with hardware and like Cubase and stuff like that, actually really hard. Like not like today, where you can just drop it in, quantize it, speed it up, snip it about, you know, like it's easy. And I thought, well, and the other thing is, because it was really all hardware based, that I didn't have the money as a kid to be able to keep buying like the next piece of hardware and that. So that's basically about as far as it got for me. But I knew it was something that I liked.
Yeah, well, that was the same for me. I mean, once, you know, the fact that I could actually, you know, arrange things on a computer screen, what I did find that quite fascinating. You know, and even though it was difficult to do, I could actually, I realized that I could put some sounds together and actually make a track.
Yeah. What would you say? So that's sort of like how the house music stuff started for you. But what about musical influences just in general? You know, so like I'm even saying maybe going even further back. You know, what started your love of music?
I mean, gosh, I mean, I started getting into like. I got into like early hip hop, you know, the old Grandmaster Flash stuff.
Yeah.
So that's where it really started for me.
Yeah.
You know, and then from there, I mean, I used to walk around as a kid with a ghetto blaster, you know.
Yeah.
When breakdancing was a thing, and I was probably about 6 years old, you know, we kids on the estate and myself we used to walk around with a piece of lino. And do breakdance, you know, with a ghetto blaster outside supermarket doors trying to get money.
Brilliant, mate.
So that's where it really started. And then you got tracks like things like White Lines. White Lines?
Yeah.
Things like that, kind of like, you know, they were crossing over into kind of like a dance music sound.
Yeah. So would you say like that was your like first real sort of musical influences?
I'd say so.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, because I mean, obviously I had older sisters and they were into like all the you know, the 80s stuff. They were into Wham and Boy George and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I always had a love for music from being a very early age. But definitely when I look back now, it, you know, the sort of route into dance music as it is. Would have started from, you know, from being quite young. And then we sort of moved on to things like the stuff that Steve Silk Hurley was doing and Marshall Jefferson in the sort of mid to late 80s. You know, that really like captured me.
How did you feel like, I mean, this is something that's quite close to my heart, about buying vinyl. There's always, and I think we've discussed this before, I've discussed it with loads of people, that there is a romance about buying vinyl that you cannot, so people that have never experienced it. I mean, one of my mates, and he might watch this video and I'm going to call him out on this. When I told him about this and said, listen, mate, there is something special about buying vinyl. And he went, mate, sounds a bit wanky to me. Because he's never done it. You know what I mean? Like, and he went, well, it all sounds a bit airy-fairy. I went, no, I'm telling you. Right, there is something special about going to a record shop with either something in your mind that you want to pick up and it ain't there, and you're digging through stuff and you find, am I right?
Yeah, absolutely spot on. Yeah. I'm still buying vinyl.
Yeah, me too.
I'm still buying, I buy quite a lot of secondhand vinyl, you know, stuff that actually, I mean, in the last few years, I've picked up some stuff that I have been searching for 20 odd years.
Yeah.
And it's only, and you know that some of the tracks, I've managed to find out what they are, because I still have got my my old mixtapes.
Yeah.
From when I used to go clubbing.
Did you examine them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've tried to, but a lot of them it won't pick up. But I've managed to find some. But then I've contacted like some of the guys that did the mixtape, especially like the local guys that were doing nights in Halifax, and they're astounded that I've still got these tapes from their nights.
Yeah.
So they've kindly like gone through the tapes and listed all the tracks.
I said like the same mate, and I said I don't want to call him out, but I'd said to him, I said, listen, like when you go to a record shop and you go in there with these expectations, because how I used to do it is, you remember DJ Mag?
Yeah.
So I'd be looking through, and you'd be looking through the charts, or you'd be looking through like interviews with DJs and producers, and they talk about their 5 hottest records, and I'd be thinking, and obviously you didn't hear it, they described it, and I'd be sitting there thinking that sounds really good. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then you think, right, off we go Saturday morning, or whenever. Go and find it. And sometimes you'd pick the record out, and obviously you put it on the deck in the record shop, and you had all these high expectations, and you put the needle on it and be like, this is shit. You know what I mean? And it'd be like, oh no. But sometimes obviously it worked out well. Obviously, if it was a really big record that had loads of traction, then generally speaking, it was obviously probably quite good. But then being there, you'd be digging through the racks, and you just pull stuff out, wouldn't you? So you had a batch of records, and you'd stand there and listen to them, and you'd more often than not, you'd find a gem, and you'd walk out of there, and there was something about walking out with that bag, and you had it physically in your hands. I mean, I've probably got like, I don't know, 6 or 7 sort of like cases of records here. So probably got about 500-600. I'll probably never ever play 90% of them, but there's something about having them, isn't there?
Yeah.
Even though you're never going to play them,
I know. I'll tell you, one of the buzzers for me was when you got your first actual record bag. You used to buy your records and put them in, because then people kind of knew that you were probably a DJ.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And play music. So
not funny when you have to carry them to the gig, though, is it?
I think, because I mean, what was I going to say? In terms of like when you used to go record shopping, I mean, I used to go to quite regular places, so the guys got to know the stuff that I was into.
Yeah.
So more often than not, when I went in the shops, they'd be expecting me. They'd have a stack waiting for me.
Yeah.
And it'd all, and they used to, they'd always like put, so like, the white label stuff, they'd always put white labels to one side.
Yeah.
Because, especially if it was somebody like, if it was Dave Morales or somebody like that,
They know you'd be into it. And they know it's a guaranteed sale, don't they, almost?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was the same. I used to go to this record shop where I am in Leamington. It was called Good Life Records. I'll never forget it. It was bright yellow on the outside. It was just a little shop. The guy who owned it, Keith, pretty much that's, I suppose, where I really learned how to DJ, because I used to because there was no YouTube or anything then, and let's be honest, like most of your mates couldn't DJ either. You know what I mean? We were all just learning off each other. And I remember going in there, and he had set 1200s behind the desk, and he used to spin a few tunes when people were in there, obviously brand new stuff. So people are going like, oh, what's that, mate? He's going, oh, just got it, got a few copies actually. And like, that's where I'd stand there watching him, and then he would say, "Oh, right, like, do you understand about the phrasing of records?" And I'd pick up these little snippets, and then I'd go back, as a teenager, and practice it, and then understand about the changes in the records. And I also felt it was like such a special time in my life. I'm sad it's gone. Like, it's so sad that there isn't vinyl record, and I get why there isn't, but I wish I had like a local vinyl record shop that I could still go and visit, because you meet interesting people in there. That's how I got all my early gigs, was the fact that you get chatting to them, and then they say, oh, listen, I do this night. You go to the night, they recognise you, so on and so forth. So
it was all part of the, all part of the buzz of being being a DJ and being into the music was that, that was like a little community in itself, but in the record shop.
I always used to feel that it was, I always felt like I was almost part, not like today, because everything is so connected, but then it wasn't. And I felt like I'm like part of something here that is like, wow, it's almost secluded from the mainstream. And I love that. I love the fact that this is like something that not everybody is into. They wouldn't even get it. They wouldn't even understand why so why do you want to mix two records together? What's it even matter? Well, I didn't know. I just liked it. You know what I mean? I just liked the concept of it. So like, yeah. So go on, mate.
Go on, mate. It's all right.
Like as a producer and as a DJ yourself, like, I mean, I know we've spoke about this quite a bit. How would you sort of like describe your style? What's your sort of like, what is your vibe, I suppose is the easiest way.
I mean, I'm not a purist, house music. Well, I say I'm not a purist. I just like really good, solid, chunky house music. I've spoken to you this before. I like things across the board, really, because there's so many, when you go and buy music now, there's so many different subgenres of house music.
Yeah. Mad that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm buying music, I can spend 3-4 hours looking in every single subgenre of house.
Yeah,
guaranteed I might pick one out of each place, but to me, it fits my vibe. So I don't really, I'm not specifically into tech or, deep house. I think overall, people will probably, if people heard my, when I'm DJing and I'm doing radio shows, I think overall people will probably say I'm a deep house DJ, because I do like the vocals. I do like the sort of, the deeper grooves. But I also like, I still love playing stuff that that David Morales produces.
Yeah. So more vocally,
and a bit more,
handbag house, mate. That's what we used to call it.
I do. Yeah, and I do love the handbag house.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's a difficult one to pinpoint, really. But
I'm the same. I remember, and in my vinyl buying days, I was younger as well, and I suppose like a lot of it comes with age. I would actually say, for instance, like I cut my teeth firstly on trance and hard house because that was the biggest genres that were around. And I really liked house music, but I almost felt like when I started buying house music, like I was like giving up my loyalty to like house and trance. And I found it really hard. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. And like, it was stupid. At the end of the day, it's what if you like it, you should buy it or do whatever you want to do. And like, now you're absolutely right. There's so many subgenres, everything. Whereas back in the day, yes, you had house music. Yes, you had stuff that was more funkier, stuff that was deeper. But like, as I said, tech house wasn't a thing. You had techno, and that was like, when you listen to a techno track, it was like, and it was just like, there's no mistaking what this is. All these hybrid sounds that like minimal tech and all this sort of stuff. Like I find it quite mad, really, because at the end of the day, it's tech house, whatever way you look at it, is just house music.
Yeah.
It's just got influences of techno, and I find all these sub genres just a bit, I don't think it's really needed.
No, but people just elaborate on it, don't they? So it starts off one way. It's a bit like, the whole garage scene, the UK garage scene, should I say? That came from, the stuff that were coming from the US.
Absolutely.
That people like Todd Edwards were producing, and even like Todd Terry. It started, that sort of two-steppy kind of beat started coming across.
Yeah.
And then, we made it our own and called it UK Garage or London. Right. Actually, initially it was called London Garage. But that I've been told was spawned out of Hard Times, which was the night that I used to go to Huddersfield. Yeah, so that whole sound was spawned out of that night. And because I mean, people used to come from all over the country to go to Hard Times. You know, I used to meet people from London, from from down your way.
Mate, there's a documentary you've got to watch, right? You'll absolutely love it. It's called Rewind Forever, and it's a boiler room video. It's a documentary about the history of garage. Mate, you've got to watch it. I watched it the other day. I loved it, and exactly what you're describing, because obviously you were there. It talks through the very start of it. These records that came along with the skippy beats and sort of different groove to it, and then how the UK took that and then moved it on. It's brilliant, mate.
I'll have to watch that.
That is exactly the time I sort of like got into this in like 1997. That was because I'm a little bit younger. No offense. Yeah. And that was the the time where that sound was really big, and like like. I always say this to people, my sister, who was older than me, had a Ministry of Sound CD. And I would say that 70% of the tracks on there were two-step influenced. So that was like, I'm talking like, Sneaker Pimps and all that sort of stuff, New Birth, Anytime, obviously they're anthems now, but then they were new. And that was what definitely rubbed off on me, where every time I heard that sort of like that groove and that that they used to have, I used to think, oh, I like this, and it's I like loads of different stuff, but it always stuck with me because it must have, I can only put it back to the fact that it must have been one of the first sort of sounds that I heard, that I was like, I like this, it's got something about it, it's got a bit of a swing to it, and
which definitely. Is, I would say your sound is pretty much, the majority of your stuff is that, isn't it?
It's just my own modern version of it. I've been doing this marketing thing, and they've like almost made me boil down to what's called like a mission statement, where you describe your brand and that. And the only way I can describe it is, I just said it. Well, it's basically my own twist on that classic 90s house sound. That's it. Loads of others have done it, Shadow Child, Low Stepper, there's been loads that have recreated it, because it was quite a big scene in Birmingham, that sort of like bass house sort of thing. So from a perspective, and this could be anything, mate, a question for you that I've got is like, is there any things that you're like most proud of? Any tracks that you've made? Any things that you've done music-wise, or could even be in your life, whatever, that you like? You think that's a standout thing for you?
I suppose if we're talking about music again, the first track that I got signed last year. That would be definitely the proudest moment, because just being recognized and somebody recognizing that what you're doing is pretty good, that did make me feel pretty proud. I have to say.
Am I allowed to talk
it took
about
a while it took a while for it all to come together and eventually get a release, but
am I allowed to talk about your potential new thing that you're doing?
Absolutely. Let's go
actually,
for it.
rather than me talking about it, why don't you hopefully tell the listeners what you're up to?
So at the minute, I've just recently released a track which is a classic hip-hop track, which was one of my favorite hip-hop tracks of all time. I've just done an edit of Eric B and Rakim's Paid in Full, but it's a house edit, obviously, coming from me, and I've done a little bit of a sort of a dub vibe on it as well. So I'm hoping that that everybody will be hearing that on dance floors pretty soon. It's I think I'm allowed to say that I've got it running through a promo service at the minute. It's been sent out to lots of DJs, and I've been getting some really good feedback on it. So it's quite a big thing. It looks to be doing quite well. So I'm getting lots and lots of good feedback on it.
So if there's any listeners out there, then at the end of the show, Brian will tell you like where you can find him. Maybe if you contacted him asking him nicely, he might give you a copy.
I might.
He might not.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, that's the thing for me. Obviously, I've got into the music scene with the idea of, releasing music and it becoming, obviously I want it to get heard and I want it to get known. But I think the biggest thing for me is I want to hear it being played in clubs and I want to see people dancing to it.
It's all about dance floor, isn't it? Yeah.
That is it. Do you know what I mean? Without going into it, we both know, there's on our sort of level, there's no money to be had from making music. So you have to be doing it for not so much just a hobby, but you have to have a passion for wanting to get your music out there and being danced to, because at the end of the day, we're making music for people to dance to. So
there's no real big monetary rewards to be had just out of the music at our level. No. You're absolutely right. And, but it's a transition, hopefully, to get to the next level. There's a bit more money to be made out of it, but there's other things that can come of it. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. So, like, if there was an ideal, what's your dream of where you might want to take this? If it could happen.
You mean my sort of music career?
Yeah.
The dream for me would be to be doing this full time. To give up the day job and be doing and this become my day job and making music, making credible music that people want to hear, want to dance to, want to play. That's the dream for me. When I started taking it really seriously a few years ago, I said, right, in the next 12 months, I'm going to have a release. And it happened, kind of.
Yeah.
I did get a verbal signing from Reptile Dysfunction. Mm-hmm. But then obviously, with what's happened, it didn't really transpire into anything until this year. But yeah, I did it, within 12 months, I had a release. So, and I've just kept pushing and pushing.
Yeah.
And so,
it's one of them, isn't it? When you get the bit between your teeth and you taste that first bit of like, well, hang on a sec, like I've made this and there's people out there that actually like it. It does spur you on, doesn't it? To think, well,
absolutely.
Well, there's possibilities, At the end of the day, like we've spoke about it a million times, it's art. And actually, I believe that if you, we spoke about it, if you do it for a long time and people understand what you're doing and you're able to reach a wide audience, then you have a very good chance of doing something quite good, quite special. Yeah. But that is a hard thing to achieve, but it is doable. Others have done it,
It is, it is, totally. I mean, I'm absolutely astounded. This Eric B and Rakim edit, as I say, I've just picked up some information today and how it's going and people feeding back on it, and I'm absolutely blown away. I
told you would be. No, I said, listen, you're going to get this feedback and you're going to think, wow, like, can't believe all these people dig it. And even people like, like he's telling me, like Gene Farris, who's like quite a big player in America. He DJs for Dirty Bird all the time, and he's quite a tastemaker. He's digging it, and you think to yourself, like, wow, like, it just goes to show that actually your efforts. I always think, like, when you put music out, it's like bearing your soul, isn't it? You just don't know what people think. But if you never put it out, you'll never know.
No, exactly. I suppose the only thing with that particular record is it's not, obviously it's not totally original work, because obviously I've sampled.
It's a bootleg, isn't it? That's the reality.
Yeah. To be honest, I made it just as like I'll tell you why I made it. I made it because in the 90s, I used to drop that record into house sets, the original hip hop version, 100 BPM,
Yeah.
and people go nuts for it.
Yeah.
And then occasionally I used to drop Dub Be Good to Me into it.
Yeah.
So that's where the kind of dub vibe comes in. And I was going to do a mashup of the two, and then it was just too. I just lost interest. So I just thought I'll just recreate that kind of dub sound. And it works.
Right,
so,
I'm a big fan of edits. There's a couple of reasons. Because one, they're yours. They're totally original. You can play them in your own sets or whatever it is, your own radio show. And the reality is, nobody has that version of that track. It's yours. The other thing is that they're a good way to get other DJs playing your music, because the reality is that everybody loves a good edit. Can you hear me, mate? Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, just froze for a second. Everybody loves a good edit. When I get them through promo, I've just had an Armand Van Helden one. You Don't Even Know Me, and like out of the 10 records that I've received so far today, that was the one that I went straight to, because I wanted to know what he'd done with it. It's just one of them, isn't it? And I do them quite often. I'm just going to do another one. I don't want to let the cat out the bag, actually, because I'm like, I've just started, not to plug myself here, but as it's my own show, I might as well
go for it.
For a second. So I've just got a website and a mailing list, and my mailing list, these sort of edits that I do that are exclusive, I used to give them away to people. I used to put them on SoundCloud. I used to give them away. Now, apart from putting them out on promo services, which is really for the real tastemakers, anybody else who wants it, they'll only be available for people on my mailing list. Because I want to make it special, that actually you can't just get that off my SoundCloud now. You've got to, if you want to be part of the community. But I've got a new one. I've got a new one that I've just started. It's a classic, because the hardest thing with edits, I've just done one, the Talamanca track that's been big this year, Burns, and I'm really happy with that edit, and I think people will love it. The hardest thing with edits is getting a clean sample, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I've always found the easiest way to do that is, say for instance, like if it's a track that you want to do an edit of, it's easier to find an old one, because you can go and find where they got the sample from. And that's what I did with, I did an edit of Soul Searcher, Can't Get Enough. Well, obviously Soul Searcher, they sampled that off an old disco record. So
That's right.
I didn't bother with their track. I went and found the disco record and found the sample and sampled it. So, but they are a good little PR exercise as well. And to be honest with you, they're so good for your sets. I mean, like the JD one that I did, obviously people got into it. That's done. That went further than any of my tracks. You know what I mean? So anyway, like let's talk a little bit about so what have you got in the pipeline? Because I know that you've got some pretty exciting news reference a certain record label, if you're able to talk about that with behind the scenes stuff. Or
you got me there. Which
A&R?
record label we're talking about, Tom?
A&R?
Oh, of course, yeah.
I didn't know whether or not you were okay talking about it.
It's a funny one, that, because I'm still like, because it's not been like properly announced. Not that anybody really cares, but I keep sort of forgetting that it's actually a thing that I'm doing now.
Tell us a little bit about it.
So I got asked a few weeks back to jump on board with Rectile Dysfunction, which is Dolly's label, and co-run by a guy called Matt Hobbins, and they just came along and said, look, we've got a kind of AR role that we've created, and we'd like you to sort of jump on board and do that. So we're like, yeah, cool, why not? I mean, no idea why they've asked me, but I'll give it a go.
No.
Well, I do know. I mean, they basically came out and said, look, we don't really. I shouldn't really say this because I might make them look like they're being ageist, but basically, because I am a little bit older and a little bit more experienced, and not, I think that's partly why they've asked me.
Yeah.
But
You've got a like a long-standing, you know, affinity with house music, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Helps.
Yeah.
So,
and you know, Reptile Dysfunction's it's not a huge label, but it's a very well-known label. But you know, they obviously Dolly's just constantly touring. So I mean, he's between him and Matt, they're basically A&R, and they haven't got, you know, they don't really have the time to, as much as they want to listen to all the demos that come through, they just really haven't got the time. So that's another reason why they've asked me. So there is actually another guy called, what's that, sorry?
How would you describe the sound of Reptile Dysfunction?
Reptile, it's very eclectic. It actually it suits me a little bit, because I think that is, I would class my sound as a little bit eclectic, you know, because I go from playing, you know, kind of that disco house vibe through to some of the deeper stuff, some of the sort of bigger sounding club tunes as well, and that's pretty much, you know, that sort of rounds up their vibe, really. I mean, they've just released a track which is actually quite different again. They've released a track by Mason. I think he's a Dutch producer, and I think it's called Hush, and that's quite different again. I'd say that's probably more leaning towards the sort of tech house vibe, as much as many people might disagree with that, but I would say it is, you know. So yeah, I think you've got to go and sort of check out their vibe, their label, to actually get it. It's actually, there's not that much to sort of get about it, really, but there's a lot of disco edited stuff. There's, as I say, kind of sort of, you know, middle ground sort of house music in there. My EP's in there, which, you know, my EP has taken from my many influences from over the last 20 years. The stuff that I've been listening to. So yeah.
What do you look for, you know, from an A&R perspective, in when you receive records? What sort of, like, what excites you when you receive a demo? Well, I know it's a hard thing to pinpoint, but
it is. But I know what how do I word this? I know what I'm not looking for. So straight away, there's certain, there's certain tracks. It's a bit like when you go record shopping. You know, there's certain tracks you literally, I mean, 3 seconds on a needle and you go, nope. You know, it's a harsh reality, but it just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the vibe.
This is where, like, you know, I'd rather be upfront with people, and I suppose you would too. And it's exactly the same with promos.
Absolutely.
Nobody listens to the whole of every record that gets sent. You have a listen, you have a skip through, don't you? And if you think yes, you'll have a proper listen to it. If you think no, that's it. That's the end. It gets binned, or, you know, and that's the same with promos, you know. And if I listen to something, I think, yeah, I quite like that. You know, I might have a bit more of a listen to it, or it might just be a yes straight away. If I have a skip through it and I just think, you know, I think for me, if it doesn't even sonically sound good, i.e. like, you know, it just doesn't sound loud or anything like that, then I'll just think, nah. I think it's, you know, for me, I really, and I say this to people all the time, like, and this is just my opinion of what I've found out for the time that I've been doing it, is submit your demo in the best possible condition you can. You know, get it mastered. It's worth it. You know, get it mixed down, or mix it down yourself to the best of your ability, or whatever. Because actually, yes, the idea of the record and everything has to suit the person's ear, but actually the idea might be really quite good. But if it sounds crap, it's a turn off straight away, isn't it?
I think if you've not got that experience at sort of even getting close to making music sound good before it gets mastered, you know, then, well, I think you're going to be struggling. But, you know, because I think you do need a degree of knowledge of how to at least get it to some kind of quality. If you don't want, keep churning out money for mastering, only to have your tracks sort of become not doing anything, or you know what I'm saying? It's a difficult one, that, because I was in a position at one point where I just thought, do I really want to keep spending all that money on mastering and then the tracks don't really do anything? But you could look at it another way and think, well, if you enjoy what you're doing and you think it's a good track, then you should be sort of doing that. You should be getting it mastered, because at some point somebody probably will like it and it's there and it's ready to go.
That's right. Yeah.
But I mean, some of the bigger labels, for instance, I know that people, I think Defected, I've heard that, they then do their own mastering.
Yeah.
So, you want to kind of get it to a level, definitely.
I think I think probably the difference is that if you're at that stage where you're dealing with Defected and, they're signing your music, you're absolutely right. Yeah. At that point, you don't need to be getting it mastered and that, because you're already, they get the fact that what you're doing, and what they're mostly listening for is the idea and, where, can the track be as good as what they need it to be. But I think for up and comers, that then, they're not, it might be their first demo that they're sending to a record label, or a record label that they want to deal with. I think it's really important to make sure, because it's first impressions, isn't it? If it sounds crap, then probably the next couple you send, they might not even be interested in listening to them. But you're absolutely right. Once you become part of the family, that's different. Because if they've signed a couple of records and the records do quite well, suddenly they know what you're about.
Yeah. I think first and foremost for me, I'm listening for the idea, and the vibe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to see through or listen through, the fact that it's maybe not the best quality mix down or whatever. That kind of comes second. Yeah. For me, I just want to hear something that I think could do well,
That's good, mate. That's good, because that's actually, in my opinion, quite a rarity with a lot of A&Rs. As I say, if it's, they all say that they're listening for the idea.
Yeah.
But in my experience, yes, I agree. It's obviously the most important part, but unless you're a known quantity with a big label, actually, if it sounds crap, they're probably not going to be interested either.
No, I know.
So here's one for you then. So we're going to come into the end, sort of the last 10 minutes. So, mate, firstly, I just want to say it's been great talking to you.
Thanks. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
Lovely to be here.
Yeah. So what I want to sort of end on is, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give, knowing what you know about the music industry? And that could be anything from production tips, that could be anything from DJing tips, whatever, What are 3 things that you think could help somebody coming into this?
Well, I would say if you're a beginner, I would say a good tip would be try not to get too overwhelmed with lots of pieces of equipment. I say that because that's one of my mistakes that I made.
Yeah. No, that's
carried away.
They want to hear.
Yeah, and you lose interest, or you can lose interest. I didn't lose interest, but it's great having hardware. It is great, because especially for somebody like me, I like to get my hands on things. But don't overwhelm yourself with too many bits of equipment. Just stick to, learn. If you're going to use a DAW, I'd say initially learn the DAW. I mean, I'm still learning how to use Ableton. There's so many things that can do, so many shortcuts that I don't know yet, that I keep skipping over. But just learn it to the best that you can.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree. So that DAW, DAW, whatever you want to call it, is basically like, if you can really navigate your way around that and you get it and you get how to, that is an instrument in itself.
It is.
I mean, I'm quite a basic producer. I have a MIDI keyboard and everything else I do completely what they call in the box. Hardly use any plugins in respect of third-party plugins. The only two I use is I use Valhalla Reverb and I use Fab Filter Pro EQ because it's really good. Other than that, everything I use is stock, and people can't believe that. They're like, well, you've not got like a delay plugin. You've not got. I'm like, well, no, because like at the end of the day, they all do the same thing. They just sound a little bit different. And don't be wrong, like some people, they build their sound up with using particular plugins because it obviously adds a particular sort of color to the sound, and that's fine. You know, if that's your thing, you know, that's fine. But for me, the sort of sound in which I make is a pretty straightforward house sound. It's like putting all these different color sounds on it. I don't think it's needed. So that I completely agree. You know, less is more, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. Yeah.
Number two.
So number two, actually going on to less is more. I think when you're making music, don't think that by adding lots and lots of effects and things like that is gonna, you know, create an awesome track. You know, try and keep things not stripped back as such, but as you're learning, as you're coming along, just keep things as simple as possible.
Yeah.
You know, work on like your melodies and your, you know, the way that everything kind of harmonizes together. I don't think you necessarily need lots of effects, you know, big sweeps and things like that. So less is more, you know, definitely. I think you can keep things relatively simple and create really good music. I mean, you only have to listen to people like Bicep. I mean, their music is so simple, and look how effective it is. You know.
Yeah, I mean, so the hook of the record is basically generally where it sort of like passes or fails, isn't it? You know, that's the reality. You know, and the hook can be different things. It could be a vocal, it could be an instrument, it could be a bit of both of them. It can sometimes just be the groove of the record, can't it? It's got no real huge hook. It just, there's something about. I'll tell you an example of that. I don't know if you've heard a tune by, mate, it's so good. I mean, this, obviously, I think it's so good. It's by Salou. It's called Joy.
No,
mate,
I've never heard it.
You will love it. Go and check it out.
Really?
It's one continuous loop, one continuous, like, Salute. Yeah, Salute.
You know me, I'm always up for listening to new music. Salou.
And it's called Joy. You'll like the dub version. It's got a vocal version, but the dub, I think's more me and definitely more you. And it's just this one loop sample, a bit like Demure, High, High Alive and Dirty. It's that sort of style record, but it just keeps going and going and going and going, and it's so hooky. It's all it needs. It's all it needs. It literally, and then the rest of it obviously complements it. It's got a massive bass line, boom, boom, boom. You know, and but it's so simple. It's one like ad lib vocal over and over, but it works.
Yeah.
So number 3.
So number 3 would be really whatever music you're thinking about making, you know, try and, if you're not into that music, because I keep hearing there's lots of new producers coming about and that they're trying to make music that they've never really been into. And I don't fully understand why, but for me, I've been listening to house music for 20 odd years, so I was always going to make house music, and I kind of know what works to a degree because I've spent time on dance floors and in DJ booths. So at least try and like get into it. If you're already into the music, whilst you're making the music, try and sort of put yourself on the dance floor. That's the way I always try and imagine like parts of it, like which bits are going to work, which bits are going to get the crowd going, depending on the style. It might be a bit of a deeper vibe, so just always try and place yourself on the dance floor.
I completely agree with that, because I see like a trend, and I get why it happens. Younger people come into this and they see what's hot at the time and they think that's what they need to do. So like minimal tech is a really big sound at the minute, but the harsh reality is that it will probably come and go, because they all do. And it won't completely go, but it just won't be as popular. And that's where it's like you're almost better not to jump on the bandwagon of these fads and just do what you want to do, because the reality is that at some point, whatever it is that you want to do will come back around and be popular again at some point. And you just need to, and how I thought about it was, I used to think back on all the house records that had like a big influence on me. And I used to think, well, what are they? And the reality is they were all what I would class as classic house records, i.e. like, I don't mean like classics, I mean that sort of vibe, like Pete Heller, Big Love, all that sort of stuff. At the end of the day, they're not tech house, they're just straightforward house music records. And like that's a really good way that if you've been listening to this music for a number of years and you're starting producing, then go back and start thinking about all the records that have had an influence on you. And then start thinking, oh wow, actually most of them are like this. Well, that's probably totally up to you as a producer. That's probably the sort of style of music that you'd be good to be making. Do you know what I mean? Totally. Don't jump on the bandwagon thinking I need to do this because that's what's hot, because what you can guarantee is it won't be hot forever.
No, you just need to be true to yourself, really. Be true about the sound that you're producing and stick with it, and don't let anybody tell you, even if you get a few knockbacks from labels, just keep at it. Keep at it, stick to your vibe.
We're coming to an end, so we're almost at an hour. So thank you for coming on. You're my first guest. So
I'm so pleased.
Hopefully this records okay. But yeah, where can people find you, mate? So tell us about your social platforms. And
I mean, basically I tend to only use Instagram for socials. I am on Facebook as well, but on Instagram you can find me at Brix Mortar DJ, and the same on SoundCloud, Brix Mortar DJ. I think I've stuck here. Have I stuck? No, I haven't stuck. It's all right. Internet will playing up, Tom.
All right. You're fine, my end.
Right. Yeah. So SoundCloud's the same. Brix Mortar DJ. I use SoundCloud just for for putting my music up there. Instagram obviously for the social media aspect. So that's the only two that I tend to use. So,
and if somebody wanted to send you a demo for Reptile Dysfunction,
well, if they want to send me a demo, they can email me, which is brian@reptiledysfunction.club. All demos are welcome, but please do go. If you go to their Bandcamp, that's where you'll find the biggest catalogue of what their releases. I think everything's on there. Go there first and check out the vibe, and have a good route round, because it is quite eclectic, but you do get a general feel when you start listening to some of their stuff. So
mate, thank you very much. I think that's a good place to leave it. And guys, go and follow Brian. Really cool guy. As you hear from the sort of podcast, very personable, knows his stuff, and you never know, he might sign one of your records at some point if he likes it.
One thing for sure, anybody that does send a demo, you will get a reply from me personally. It won't be. You might actually initially, I think there's an automated thing that pops up, but just ignore that and bear with me, and I will respond to people personally.
Mate, that's brilliant. Right, I think we're done. I'm going to hit stop. So hang on for a minute, because I'll have a chat to you, mate. So I'm going to hit stop now.